Well, Patrick, thanks for being here with me today. I just want to kind of dive right into it as you're sitting across the table from me, and I was thinking, well, how did you and I meet? And so to kind of set that story up, you and I both met at a government building in the town of Oro Valley, and we recognized each other from church, and you're like, hey, you got an open seat, and you sat down, and I'm just sitting there. What are two guys like us hanging out at an Oro Valley town council meeting in the middle of the week? I would like to think you and I, with family men and things going on in our life, we probably had other things we could be doing. What's that all about?
There's definitely a good portion of my life where I tried to avoid buildings just like that. So it was a testimony in itself, just the fact that I was there. But yeah, I mean, we both go to church at OVCN, Oro Valley Church of the Nazarene, and they've been battling with the town of Oro Valley for about 4 or 5 years at this point. Really just to get a height increase of, I think it started out as an 11-foot increase, and then it went down to a 7-foot increase. There's been a lot of pushback from the neighborhood. And so, we were there to support the church, talk about how important it is to our community, talk about what it's done in our lives.
Yeah.
And so, there was like one chair left an hour before the meeting started. So that's a testimony in itself. That, the OVCN congregant members just packed it out. And you were very welcoming. And we had a pretty enjoyable conversation for like an hour and 20 minutes waiting for the council members to take their seats.
Yeah. I'd like to take some of our time today to just unpack some of the things we spoke about. But, as I was thinking about that, what we were experiencing and like a witness to, this phrase kept coming to my mind: letter of the law versus spirit of the law. And I could be wrong in my assessment, and I'm not picking on that council, but when I think about religion at large, I feel like there's something else unspoken being said underneath this idea of an attack on the church, an attack on things we face as men, as husbands, and as fathers. And there's some that, because of that other side, the secular solution, if I may, it causes really good men to stay quiet. It causes really good men to stay on the sidelines and not be motivated to do something about it. So I just want to say it was really cool to see you there and to be doing something about it. It's like, I know we've got a million things going on. And then when I got invested in it, it's like, wow, maybe I start wanting to doing this on a regular basis, especially when we had to go. I was in Chicago last week, and you sent me a text, and there was another scramble meeting, and you were there for that one.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to revisit a 7-1 or 7-0 decision. But I think there's something there. I think there's something to. I don't know if you're experiencing it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me to be a direct attack on the church. That certain part of the neighborhood, we have a high school that is a 60-foot building.
Yeah.
That's directly east, so it's between the church and the mountains. And the sanctuary we have right now is 29 feet tall.
Right.
And so the church has compromised with the neighborhood. We went down from a 40-foot request to a 36-foot request, so it's a 7-foot additional request. And our lawyer kind of showed the diagrams with the arrows and everything, kind of showing how it wouldn't impact people's views of the mountains. It's nestled literally in the shadow of that 60-foot gymnasium at the school. And there were still tons of people that turned out. There's signs all over the church about how the community is rejecting it. And I mean, there's signs that are really just twisting God's word in the Bible. And to me, it does seem like a spiritual opposition against the church, because you have a park in that area, you have a school in that area. I mean, what better place to build a church and to make a church larger? And I mean, just a testimony to OVCN, we were at, they had to have 5 Easter services, I think, just this last weekend. And my wife and I had the opportunity to sing in the choir, which is another crazy story. But we were able to step out to the third space to watch the second to 9:30 service. And we had so many extra chairs packed in that third space. They were almost out to the auditorium where the bathrooms and the doors are. So it's obvious, if anybody shows up there, that we need that extra space.
And I know we are biased to this conversation. We're members of the church. Our families go there. But in the most objective way, I'm sitting here going, if there was a real grievance, I would want to know about it. And I don't speak on behalf of the church, but if there was a real grievance that we could do something to compromise with the church and do the neighborly thing, I know we would be doing it. But for me, it was like, if the argument was like line of sight to a view, just what you just painted out was that was your talking point. The issue was height, but there was no line of sight issue. So it makes me think, what else is going on there? What is this really about? And so I do believe, and it's not just this church versus the neighborhood. At the macro level, no matter where we look, there's this opposition to what I would say families and good men really not feeling comfortable to step in and not realizing that there's a real agenda that is an attack on the family, and in particular, a Christian family. So you said you were in the choir last week, so maybe we take even a bigger step back. And why are you a man of faith?
Well, that's a great question. I guess we can get into it a little bit here.
Great.
I grew up in the East Coast in New Jersey. With a family that we talked about God. We went to church from time to time, probably Christmas and Easter, and maybe a few times in between. But I never really knew the Lord. I never had a personal relationship with Jesus. I definitely saw it as more of a religion. I have to do the right things. I have to say the right things. And when I became a teenager, that became too much. I never really had anybody tell me, to your point about, a man thinks it's black and white, right? In the faith, which it's not. It takes a relational. I never had that man telling me that like, hey, listen, it's okay. Like if you're 17, 18, like you're going to screw up, you're going to blow it, obviously, but that doesn't mean you have to fall away from your faith. And so, I went away to college at Rutgers, and I just pretty much completely went off the deep end with partying and, being with women and experimenting with different drugs. And, after a few years of that, I became extremely addicted to opiates, to pain pills, to Adderall. Ended up dropping out of college, and my parents sent me down to Florida to go to a rehab program, secular rehab thing. So it's kind of weird in the East Coast, in Jersey specifically. If your kid has a drug problem or something like that, send them to Florida. It was like, it's big business. You go down to Florida, insurance pays for your stay at rehab, and they churn them out like that. So I went down to Florida. Well, I mean, they don't preach Jesus, right? In these rehabs, they kind of tell you like what you're doing wrong, what happened to you in your past. It's not really your fault, anything that modern psychiatry is teaching us today. And so needless to say, I went off the rails. I got even worse. I developed a heroin addiction. I became an IV user. I became a cocaine and crack addict. Spent some time living homeless, committing crimes to sustain my drug habit. And, in a time of desperation, I called my dad. And during this time, he was radically saved, right? So I kind of forgot that part. And he would try to talk to me about the Lord, and I'd be like, no, I know who you really are. I don't believe the change that I see in you, right? I was very, I resented God, and I resented him for reflecting God. And I didn't believe the change that happened in him. I thought that he was still the guy that was very hard on me, that was very strict growing up, that was, emotionally abusive. Because I had no idea what Jesus was capable, man, but like what he could truly do to set somebody free. But I called him and he said, hey man, I read about this program out in Arizona. It's called Teen Challenge. It's a Christian recovery program. It's 13 months long. It's all men, no girls, and you're not allowed to smoke cigarettes. You want to go? And I was like, no way, no way. And I don't know, man, something happened because, I sleeping outside next to these train tracks, and I'm just like, man, this is my life. I get up every day. I'm dope sick. I'm thinking about jumping in front of a train. Like, what's this going to hurt? I'll try it. And, came out to Arizona, man, went through Teen Challenge, and, had a couple of hiccups, but, I've been clean and sober by the grace of God since 2015. I just hit 10 years sobriety, and, God completely changed my life, man. He it wasn't like a lightning strike, like all of a sudden everything was better, but I learned about his love. I saw he's done miracles in my life. And at this point, I can't help but serve him, and reflect him the best that I possibly can.
Powerful. I'm sitting here looking at a man that does not look like someone that what you just described. And that's a miracle of me looking at someone that it's like, he was laying next to a train track, to wake up to go get his next fix is what I heard you say. And all glory to God.
Yes.
And so I want to, if you don't mind, you have this relationship with your father. And I heard you talk a little bit about, maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like a hesitancy. There was something about your relationship with your father that made it a little bit difficult for you to trust it. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. I think that I had a difficult time measuring up to my dad's standards. I'm the oldest of three.
Okay.
I think it's hard, specifically for men who have boys as their oldest child, because we kind of project all of our manliness, all of our expectations on them. I'm dealing with that right now, right?
Same.
And I'm praying. I'm praying for God's grace every day.
Yes.
But yeah, I had a hard time measuring up to his standards, and we butt heads a lot when I was a teenager, and it's not his fault, right? Like, he was raised by a man who was physically abusive,
right?
Didn't know it was wrong, did the best that he could. I think his dad was a good man overall, but my dad didn't want to be that guy, so he thought, the emotional abuse was better in a way. Yeah. And for me, I don't know, sometimes you'd rather just take like getting spanked or whatever over like the emotional stuff.
Yes.
And so, I saw a radical change in his life probably when I was in high school. Looking back, I know it was Jesus, but at the time I'm like, man, this.
And you were still in the house at the time.
Yeah, still in the house. And then so when I started to get into my addiction, I hid it from my family. I didn't want to tell them. I was embarrassed, but probably more proud than anything. And didn't want to talk to him. Didn't think he would understand. Thought that he would reject me, out of the house, or reject me as a son if he found out the truth.
Did the hard drugs sneak up on you, or did it just happen over time?
Oh yeah. It snuck up on me over time, I'll say. I never wanted to admit for years that marijuana was a gateway drug. What I would say is the next drug that you try after marijuana is a gateway drug. But I can honestly say, if you're not using marijuana, then you're not going to be doing any drugs, most likely. So,
that's a fair statement.
So I can say that marijuana is a gateway drug. But no matter what I did, even as a kid, I did it addictively, right? And I don't know if you have a similar personality. It feels like you may have it, but God obviously means that for good, right? Like, right. He says in his word that we should addict ourselves to his word, right? But the enemy pollutes that, obviously, and turns it around. And so he gets us addicted to anything else. Money, sex, drugs, anything like that. So when I started drinking and smoking weed, I did it excessively. When I started doing pills, I did it excessively. And I went through a breakup, a tough breakup. And I had a buddy who, he's not a buddy, but he said, "Hey, try this." And I said, "What is it?" He's like, it'll make you feel better. It's diesel. And I said, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it." And it turned out it was heroin. And I did it a few times. And once I found out what it was, I said, "Oh man, that wasn't a big deal. It's like $5 or $10, and it lasts me 2 days." And I was mentally and emotionally addicted at that time, but I didn't realize it
in the moment.
And it truly does. It takes a few months, and by the time you realize it, it's too late.
It's got its talons in you.
Yeah. It takes a little while for you to get physically addicted, I think, especially when you're younger, when you're 18, 19, 20. But it had its talents. The first time I tried it, I absolutely fell in love, and I thought I was a better person. I was more confident. I was more carefree. Yeah. I didn't care what people thought. I was, could talk to anybody, and it's like the devil shows you like a little bit, right, and then he snatches it all away, and then by the time, and it's too late by the time you figure out what's really going on.
And I'm not going to be Captain Obvious here, but here I go. It's like most of the telling things with sin is it does feel good. Mm-hmm. And there's this confidence booster, but it's such fake news, to use the expression, right? It's like that path to an instant gratification. And as fathers, that's one of the things that I'm talking to my children about is pay attention to those instant gratification portals, because it's hard to come out of those things. And depending on if it being like heroin, the data says that's such a tough thing to overcome.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends, who haven't made it. They're still in their addiction, or they've passed away over the years. And what you said reminds me of a skit that we used to do at churches in Teen Challenge called The Bucket of Fun and Pleasure.
Okay.
And it's about just sticking your toe in at first, and it feels really good, but before you know it, you have your foot stuck in this bucket. And you think it's amazing. You think it's like a party, it smells good, and everybody around you sees it for what it really is. And it's disgusting. It's a bucket of trash. It smells like a porta potty, but you're the only one that can't realize that.
Yeah.
And it's the truth.
As I listen to your story, it starts out where you don't really realize it when you're going in, right? And it's because of the feelings of it, the confidence it gives, perhaps the friendship that I put in air quotes that it gives you. But then once you kind of get all into that, was there a point that you started to, if I heard it correctly, there's a point where you realized, I'm in over my head? This is bigger than me in a bad way, but then you didn't have the ability to get out. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I found myself, oh my gosh, when I was in Florida, I mean, I was only down there for 8 months, but I found myself like breaking into people's cars, breaking into houses, trying to set up and rob drug dealers. And I grew up in a middle-class home, went to a great school, have parents that are still together, that drug me to church, I was supposed to graduate with an engineering degree in 2011. I would have moments where I'd step out of my body and I'd be like, who are you? Who did you become? You are not this person. I think like God was showing me a little bit of like, dude, you're not this guy. I have a plan for you.
Yeah.
And that happened for years, even when I went through Teen Challenge initially, and ended up going back to drugs. I had a 1 month period where I basically had like 5 near-death experiences, and I could vividly feel that God was removing his protection from me. And at this time I was saved. I'm fast forwarding a couple of years. But I felt at the first time I was like truly responsible for my own actions. God is like, I've been protecting you up to this point, but you're going to die in your addiction if you don't change your ways.
Yeah. I want to stay here just a little bit longer, and then I want to talk about the growth from that place, that this adversity in your life. So you said you went to a secular help, and that clearly didn't work. And then you found Jesus.
Right.
What were some of the things that stood out as to your perception on why the secular help was lacking and wasn't a solution?
Yeah, it was, it's just so systematic, and it's a big business. And, if the last 12 to 15 years have taught me anything, it's that people cannot change separate from Jesus. And I think some of the people there have good intentions and truly believe in what they're doing, but overall, I think it's a scam. I think that people can't change. I was, meeting with different counselors and psychologists, and the things that they would teach and the things that they would tell me. And I remember one particular experience. They had my mom and my sister come down. It was like family day.
Yeah.
And they had me tell them that I didn't love them. And it was just a nightmare. I mean, my mom and my sister are crying, and it was just it's a terrible experience, man. It's about like tearing you away from your family, or blaming your decisions and what you've done on your family, where Jesus is all about restoration. I mean, I'll say this too. I worked for Teen Challenge 6 or 7 years overall, and the only men that were truly had restoration in their families were the men whose families knew the Lord. Like, it was impossible not only for them to change without a radical encounter with the Lord, but it was impossible for their families to forgive them and accept them like as a changed person if they didn't know the Lord. And it's very similar to what I saw with my dad. When he changed, I didn't know the Lord. I didn't believe it. I was like, hey, it's any day you're the old Jim,
Yeah.
But I've seen miracles, like I said, and I know that change, those encounters are only possible with him.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things that just stand out to me. Capital R, relationship. And as I think about some of these, I think your word's systematic, very checkboxy.
Right.
It's very algorithmic. It's very scientific. And I'm not downplaying those things. Those things really have helped. But, and again, someone can fact check me on this, but here's what I can say with great confidence. The faith-based, Christian-based recovery programs are needle movers compared to anything else secular. And I really believe that aside from it being relationship, not only even in the program, but the fact that in our darkest day, Jesus is with us. And no matter what we do, he says, I love you and I want a relationship with you. And imagine how that isn't, no one talks that way outside of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the face of wrong, you know, someone cutting you off or someone really being mean-spirited to you, that's not the first impulse.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's like you have that relationship with Jesus. And then when you're in a Christian program, you're also surrounded by men who have that relationship with Jesus. So it's like, you have no choice but to say like, what's going on?
What is going on there?
I mean, you get to a place like Teen Challenge and these guys are telling you like, I love you, man. You know, guys, face tattoos, neck tattoos.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and it's authentic.
giving you a hug. Yeah. It's like, all right, either this is a cult and everyone's crazy or like Jesus is doing something, right? Like something's real. And the other big difference is like when you go to a secular recovery program,
Mm-hmm.
you're surrounded by people that don't know what you've been through, right? They study it, you know, they go to college, they read about it, but in Teen Challenge, for better or worse, you know, the program is completely run by men who've graduated the program that have been through their own addictions. I mean, I became the center supervisor and it's like, I know what you guys have been through, right?
Yeah.
I've experienced it. I know how you feel right now. And I know that there's hope for you, right? Because God is no respecter of person. And if he did it for me, Paul says like, I was the greatest of all sinners, right? If he did it for me, who are you to think that he won't do it for you?
Yeah. And the Bible is just rich of those stories.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone that God has called to do something for him. King David, you know, look at his story and, you know, he's sleeping.
Oh yeah.
He's sleeping someone other than his wife. Or you look at Peter denying him and, you know, Saul before Paul is out there going against Christians. And that's who God picks to like go tell his story, to go spread the good news. So you have this transformation in your life. You mentioned it a little bit. You're now, you know, in a senior position. I don't know if it'd be a leadership position with Teen Challenge, but now the story has changed. You're now starting to see it working in your life. What does it feel like to have someone who you've been in their shoes, so to speak, or literally in their shoes, and now you've gone through this experience of adversity, side of the road next to some train tracks, and now through God's work in your life, you've got someone broken in front of you. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. You know, I it's been a long time, so I've moved on from Teen Challenge back in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's ministry, man. There's ups and downs. There's you know, you really have to rely on the Lord because it can get very grinding, right? You see a lot of guys that you pour into. That you think that are making progress, just take off, or, you know, lie and steal and everything like that. And I think you can become callous to that. But if you give it all to God and you say like, hey, I'm doing this for you and for you only. I mean, I'm close with at least 10 guys who have been radically saved and their lives are changed and they're still, you know, drug free by the grace of God. Yeah. I've also had guys that I've looked up to, guys that have been, you know, sort of like my idols who have gone back to drugs and it's taken their lives. Yeah. But yeah, I tried to always remember how I felt when I was in their shoes. So coming off of like an opiate addiction, it's very hard physically, but I struggled more with the mental side of it, with withdrawing and the way that the devil kind of plays tricks in your brain. So I try not to take anything too personal, but
sure.
Just encouraging the guys and saying like, hey, I've been there. Like, I know exactly how this feels. I was like 130 pounds when I came in and arms just torn up and just crying every day, like not even knowing why I'm crying. And, you know, I know how hard it is. So try to have patience with those guys, try to show them love and remember that a lot of those guys have never had love in their life, especially from another man. And so being patient
That's
with them, because it's going to feel weird in the beginning. And being consistent and showing them that, I'm authentic and I mean what I'm saying.
Yeah. So you overcome this. You come out the other side of this. You're fast forwarding. You and I spent a little time at the the government building a few weeks ago talking about family. Tell me a little bit about your family and fatherhood and some of the rewards and challenges that we face as Christian men and trying to lead our family to Christ.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the newest adventure in my life. I met my wife in 2020. We got married the same year. And at the time I was still in school, so I went back to school. And so we had kind of said, we'll wait like a year or two before we try to have kids. I want to be finished school and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's just like taking that plan away from God. Right. Mm-hmm. Long story short, we've been trying to have kids now for 3 or 4 years, and, it hasn't worked out for us yet. Mm-hmm. We're still hoping and believing, like, we know that God has a family for us. And so we have, we looked into adoption because, it's her heart to be a mother. It's my heart to be a father. And we're very discouraged by that process, and so I felt like the Lord really pressed on me to be a foster parent. Right. Yes. So we started that process last year, and we got certified by the state in October. Mm-hmm. And
this was past October.
Yep, just this past October. And so we got our son. He was placed with us on election night of all nights. Talk about, like, I was stressing about the election. Like, hey, we got the 6-year-old. I'm like, I don't care about the election anymore.
Right.
How am I going to be a dad? Yeah.
Wow.
He's been with us now for I guess about 5.5 months. And
how old is he?
He's 6.
When you started the fostering relationship, how old was he?
Yeah, he was 6.
6. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So he had just turned 6. So his birthday's in October. So, and that's been a crazy adventure, man.
So you make this commitment. So many questions here. So you make this decision, and you feel God leading you towards this fostering relationship. So you make the commitment. Like, where do you go? Like, where do you start to look?
Yeah, I mean, I have been, like, in crazy situations in my life, and it's just like God's given me the ability to just be like, take it like 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. Yes. Thank God. Because if I step back and look at my life, it's like, God, I'm in over my head every day, God,
Yes.
But yeah, we show them that love. It's similar to how I would treat the guys at Teen Challenge. It's just like, man, I know where you've been from. I know that you haven't known the love of the Father or a father, right? Mm-hmm. And so I do the best I can to show them that love. I've gotten to witness my wife as a mother. And it's, I didn't know that I could fall even more deeply in love with her, but seeing her
as a mom,
as a mom, as a mother, as a loving, nurturing mother, it's just the most beautiful thing. It's what God intended. And, so he gave us a family, and it's new every day. I blow it every day. I have, unfortunately, some of the same characteristics that my father had and that his father had. I try to lay that down at the cross every day, and just show them that unconditional love.
Yeah. Do you? I want to talk more on that. But do you put do you feel like an application, or like, maybe I'm asking the administrative question here. It's like, so when you make this commitment to, I want to be a foster parent, is there different programs and outreaches here in Tucson or in the state that kind of take you down that path or help make that connection?
Yeah. So there's different organizations. And so we went with the ministry called GAP, which is a great organization. Okay. I would recommend them to anyone who's looking into getting certified, but they basically walk you through the process. So
you're not alone.
You're not alone. It's probably between 30 and 40 different pieces of either paperwork that you have to fill out or things that you have to turn in. And so it was a process that took probably about 6 months. It's they have a foster care college where you have to go to classes. It's like 4 hours a night, once a week for like 6 weeks. And they do the full background check. You have to get 10 people to, sign off and recommend you, I guess. And so it was a long process. You treat it like anything else. It's just like, okay, what's the next thing on the list? Check it off. What's the next thing on the list? And God had our son for us waiting there, and
So going back to this, I think about my own journey where, my wife and I got married, and we got married real young. I was 19, or she was 19, I was 20, and we finished up college together. And about 5 years later, we started having our first son, and we have 3 kids now. But to your point about there's something in the relationship where you're from husband and wife, and now I'm a dad, and she's a mom, and those are different loves, aren't they?
Yeah, they definitely are, and it's difficult as a man, like being the father of a son that's not biologically yours, and I love him, but it's not like what I would imagine it is when you see your son being born. And I don't want that to sound callous. Like I have a heart to just give him the most amazing life and to be the best father for him. But I believe that women are wired differently, and especially my wife. Like I've seen how she is with her nephew. I mean, our dogs with Javi. It's unconditional from day one. It's an all-in, loving, nurturing. She would lay down her life for this boy.
Day zero.
Yeah, she quit her job. She became a full-time mom for this boy and for our family, because that's what's best for our family in this time. And I mean, she has been such a trooper, and yeah, it's a different kind of love, man. It's like a complete love, Well,
as we as fathers compare notes, I'm not going to act like I'm going to get in the shoes of what it feels like to have a foster child, and in inverse, you haven't had the opportunity yet to experience biologically, but there's something very similar, at least from my experience. I'm not saying that we are speaking on behalf of all men here, but it's just me and you compare our notes. I think about what you said about day zero. You watched your wife just have this unconditional love. And if I'm being transparent with you, while my son was from me, if I'm being candid about it, like it took me a moment to, and I don't know if this is just my biological hardwiring as a dude or not, but it's like I look at the different phases. My oldest son's now 20, and I have another one on deck for 18, and my daughter's 14. And for what it's worth, there's differences between the boy and the girl, and some of the leadership decisions I make between the two of them. But I watched that with my wife. There was something about there's a real leadership that I've watched as women and moms. It's an underdeserved responsibility. And when I look at the world at large, they talk about that. I was listening to a comedian talk about this journey that him and his wife were on, and she was in corporate America, as his story goes, and she stepped out of corporate America because she wanted to be a mom. And he said it used to sadden his heart when he would watch her talk about this. She would say something like, "Well, I'm just a mom now." And when she said that, he said it just hurt his heart so much, because from his perspective, and as we think about our wives and all the responsibilities they have, that nurturing love, that no matter what, and I think as fathers, and we talk about this a little bit, is as men we can be very black and white about things, can't we? Right? There's a right way and there's a wrong way, and and I just watched the balance that's needed. So when I think about this, as I'm just riffing out loud with you on it, as we compare notes, it needs both. You need a strong relationship, in my assessment. You need a strong father. You need a strong mom. And I remember I reference this often, I remember Pastor Chris's lesson on truth and grace and the importance of both. And he was standing up there with 2 buckets, and he was teaching that it's not one or the other, it's both. And so when we're talking about moms and dads and how we love and the spiritual leadership a child needs in their upbringing, I celebrate the differences, and they're important. But that distinction of just mom day zero, just immediately, in your wife's case, she didn't have that 9-month journey and bonding. Right. But as you describe it to me, she had it the second she met him. Yeah,
it kicks in immediately, and I love that training about grace and truth. I mean, we used to teach the grace based method in Teen Challenge, and they add an element also called time. So grace, truth, and time, and you need an equal helping of all 3 of those. But Yeah, the world unfortunately is kind of removing those roles from a mother and a father, and has basically told the family that, you know, a mother is no different than a father, is no different than two fathers, two mothers, whatever it may be. But that's just a lie. I mean, we've seen it in our lives, and I could never do this by myself without my wife. And I'm pretty confident, as amazing as she is, that she couldn't do it without me. And
That's right.
And we need each other. We are less than half without each other, right? And we're whole together. So
just to spend a little bit more time there, I was in lunch just a few weeks ago with another good friend of mine, and we were talking about we need 100% man and we need 100% woman. And what I see in secular teaching today is it's almost like there's this 50-50 idea that's like, not that we aren't learning from each other, not that I should be rigid and I should just do it my way and she should just do it their way, but there's a real partnership.
Right.
And when I think about that truth and grace lesson, there's times where as parents, my wife and I have what I call like a pre-meeting before we have to do something really important as parents. It's like there's times where I know I'm about ready to go light things up. It's like, get in here, we're going to talk about this, and I'll get her assessment. I'll go, is this the play we're running? Is this the right way forward? And sometimes yes. Other times she'll soften that message. Right. There's other times she's going to run in there and it's going to be, to use the expression, all grace. It's just going to be this big cuddle session, and I'm looking at that going. And so we're getting better, and just as mom and dads, my wife and I, as we reflect on this, we're getting better at having these pre-meetings and working in unison, this partnership, while celebrating the real differences, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's so crazy how your upbringing influences you. So as tumultuous as the relationship that I had with my dad growing up, I never saw my parents fight. Right? Never ever saw them fight. And they were very intentional about not fighting. My mom's parents fought all the time. Yeah. And so my mom told my dad, we're never going to fight in front of the kids. And so I kind of had this idea of marriage that like, we're fighting, like something's wrong, we should never fight. My parents never fought. Right. I truly believed as a 30-year-old man that my parents never fought. Yeah. And my wife, she had the opposite upbringing. Her parents fought all the time. She saw physical altercations. She saw, one or the other getting kicked out of the house. And so she had a much different upbringing, but it has made us to be more balanced together, where we don't want to fight in front of our son, but at the same time, we don't want to give him sort of like a false sense of like, parents or people are never supposed to have disagreements. But I like the idea of the pre-meetings before, because I do have a tendency of being 0 or 100 in an altercation with my son, or a confrontation, whatever it may be. And my wife has done such a great job in not correcting or not doing that in the moment, but coming, after the fact and saying like, hey, maybe we should. And I'm usually like, oh yeah, I totally blew it there. We need to come back around and make this right. But that's good wisdom.
Well, when we have the moment to do pre-meetings, sometimes life doesn't throw it up that way. We're in the situation, one dad, dad's over here, mom's over here, and we don't have that opportunity. But in those big decisions or choices that we're trying to help our children through, we've gotten better at those pre-meetings, learning from the mistakes we made when those pre-meetings weren't happening.
Right.
Let me slow down the pre-meeting thing, because we would have two different opinions. My wife would have an opinion on how to solve it. I'd have an opinion on how to solve it. And we were not moving in unison. Maybe that's a better way I should say pre-meeting. Mm-hmm. It's a meeting to make sure her and I were aligned. Because if we're not aligned as leaders in any organization, even stepping out of the home, everyone below your leadership sees the misalignment.
Right.
And it's in that misalignment that the problem starts to show up. So when we move in unison, and kids know how to manipulate this too. It's like dad says no or yes, then the answer they don't want, they're going to go to the other side. So when you have those pre-alignment meetings, they're getting the same message. And so it strengthens it. Super important. And, we're talking about fatherhood, and you referenced correctly the way we were up. Our upbringing has real influence on how we make decisions now. And I can think of times where I'd say, man, The moment I'm a father, I'll never do that. Right. Now, some of those things I find myself doing that for good reason. Right. In the moment in my adolescence, I think like, man, my dad shouldn't have. But then as I'm older and with wisdom, you're like, thank God he did do that, and I'm going to do that too. But there's other pieces where, there's something that is paid forward, but it's a big responsibility. And I don't know about you, but I feel that weight. And as I've increased my focus on Christ and got real serious about 11 years ago, I got real serious about my walk with God. And, 11 years ago, I wasn't talking this way. 11 years ago, I was professed, not literally 11 years ago, but when I got out of college for the first 10 years, I claimed to be agnostic. And I was already a father. We already had 3 children. And things weren't going horrible, but things weren't going great. And there was cracks in the foundation, all of the relationships, cracks in my relationship with my wife and with my children. But I have found the more I get into faith, I feel this responsibility of really what we have as fathers, because I hear you loud and clear. The things we're doing right now has real impact on our children's children and our children's children's children. It's heavy.
Yeah, it's heavy. And, my son has already had a dad that's blown it once. And, we don't know how long he's going to be ours. And we are trying to adopt him. We're going through that process right now, but it's a very long, drawn out process. But, could you imagine having 2 dads that have just blown it and not shown you the love of God? Like, that's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
And being dropped into this, like, I have no choice but to count on God. And I blow it all the time, and I don't want to I don't want to lose it on him. I don't want to yell at him. I don't want to hit him. I don't want to do any of that stuff. But how do you discipline? How do you show that you're serious? How do you show your consistency without, yelling and screaming? Because that's the only thing that I had was the screaming, the yelling. Okay, I know it's serious.
The drill sergeant.
Yeah. How do you communicate that severity without being that guy, with keeping it rational and not raising your voice and not letting anger come through?
Yeah.
Well,
from my own experience, I've done both. I will still probably do both. My oldest son got the brunt of that more than my other children. Maybe it's the benefit or lack thereof of being the firstborn. Maybe that's why the firstborn gets the birthright, because they get the practice session. Not sure I'm theologically correct about that, but that's my take. And I had to go back and repair some of that with my son. I remember, to your point, being the father that took the drill sergeant moment where he made a mistake and he was having that set down with me, and we'd spend 2 hours at when I say 2 hours, I mean 2 hours, where I was just that drill sergeant unpacking it. And there's emotional damage that can take place when that happens. And as my son and we started doing hunting trips together. And I noticed that I needed to go back to my son. I'll tell you the story. So from about 16 to 18, I was really heavy on him in the wrong way. And it feels like the right thing to do. And we are surrounded by this as men, where you have that, what I call a drill sergeant, drop and give me 50. And that pressure is a privilege. It's a quote I find myself saying, and it does strengthen you, but there's a time and a place. And so there was a couple of times where, do I want to be right, or do I want to be in a relationship? And you can't teach an empty chair. And someone told me that, and as I reflected on that, sometimes I do my biggest thinking when I'm getting ready to fall asleep and I'm trying to reconcile the day. And I was struggling with your question: how do I repair some of these pieces with my son? And him and I were on this hunting trip just this last fall. We weren't successful in harvesting an elk, but we had this moment where we just started talking to each other as men. He was my son, but he was another grown man. He's 20, and so we were just 2 men talking on the side of a mountain, and he starts talking about the hurt he's facing. And as he's talking about some of the hurt he's facing, he wasn't saying I was the reason, and maybe I was listening to it too much, but I could see the hurt he was facing where I might have had something to do with that. And I needed to do something about that. I needed to ask for his forgiveness. And so we just had this moment on the side of the mountain where we just hugged it out and just cried on each other's shoulders, and literally. And it was our most favorite hunting trip so far. We came back with no trophy, no success story, no meat in the freezer, but it was just this moment where I needed to ask for his forgiveness, and I needed to point out to him as a father, this is where I did it wrong, and I'm so thankful that you're still in front of me. I'm so thankful that I have a relationship with you, and I'm going to maximize on this. One other thing I'd say about it is I heard someone say that the coolest miracle that you can face as a parent is to have your child come back to you as an adult and want to be in your life. It's not just getting them ready for the world and the adventure. Think about all those folks that have no relationship with their adult child. That's got to be so sad. That's your child that goes on. Some people don't even talk anymore.
Yeah, I feel like you're like God gave you a glimpse of like the heart of the Father, right? Like the love that he has for us, that would, make him sacrifice his son, allow his son to be sacrificed for the forgiveness of our sins. And I can't imagine that right now, but I had a similar moment with my dad, with a gentleman who essentially specialized in restoring relationships between men and their fathers in Teen Challenge. He was just a volunteer, and he had a calling from the Lord. And as you can imagine, most of the men that come in through the program, most of the men that struggle with addiction, there's something going on with the relationship with their dad. And we had that same moment, and that was years ago. And I went back to my drug addiction, but from that moment on, like, my dad and I, we cried in each other's arms. He apologized to me. I apologized to him. He's been my best friend since that moment. So I can tell you from the other perspective that moment forever changed my life. And I think that he saw me as an adult and as a friend, in addition to being a son.
Yeah. In
that moment, but I've not had a friend closer than him since that happened. That was, 12, 13, 14 years ago. And it's amazing. He lives on the other side of the country. I mean, we talk all the time, but there's nobody else that I'd rather go to with anything than my dad. And it's because of a moment like that. So your son that will change his life forever.
We feel that, and we've grown from that. And it's definitely been a milestone and inflection point in our life. And I think about the whole setup to parents. It's like you can read everything you want to read, but then the human being that's in your dwelling under your responsibility is also watching us live life at the same time. So you have this kind of dual responsibility, as I see it, where you've got to teach someone how to live life, how to be a good citizen, how to love your neighbor. You got to teach them all those things while you yourself as a person are also on that same journey as an adult.
Right.
And your story of addiction, there are people that are parents with a story of addiction. And so when I say I feel the weight, this is just anyone listening to this podcast right now. It's if you find yourself entertaining your attention and thought on something else other than your wife and your children, it's a big deal. Right now there could be someone listening to this that is going to go get a drink, that is going to go chase a vice, that's going to give their attention to something other than the thing that they are most responsible for. It's a big deal. And I'm not saying we should feel the crushing weight of that, but Christ called us to a cross. As fathers, that's an example of a great cross to carry. You've got to carry the emotion, their confidence building, the skilling up, while you yourself are doing it, and your children are watching you. Yeah. There's times where I'll be saying something either to my wife or someone else. They're like listening like a sponge. And 3 years, 4 years later, they'll sneak them and they'll say something that I'm like, I thought at the time they weren't even paying attention to.
Yeah, I'm expecting that because my son, we talk around him and he acts like he doesn't pay attention, but I'm like, he's soaking everything up and he's listening. And yeah, what you do is so much more powerful than what you say, right? Like I think that I can teach a pretty good act, but yeah, am I living that? Am I showing him the love of Christ? I don't even think I'm doing a good enough job communicating it, talking to him about it. But what's even more important is showing it in my actions. And yeah, I pray for that every day, for God's heart for him and his grace on my life. And well, it's a heavy burden.
It is a heavy burden. And when I mentioned the cracks in my foundation, it wasn't until I surrendered to God and said, look, I've been trying to willpower this on my own. I've been trying to figure it out on my own, listen to some inspirational, lecture or podcast or book, and those things help. But the thing that has ultimately helped me is a relationship with Jesus Christ and his blueprint, Holy Scripture. Every problem that you and I have talked about at this table and the problems we've not talked about at this table, Jesus has been a living example for us. And as we celebrate Easter, just that occurred this past weekend, and his overcoming of death, his overcoming it of adversity, and how he did it. It's just by his grace.
Amen.
Well, thank you for spending this time with me, and I love a good origin story, and you really brought it home for us today. And I know that what you shared with me and on this podcast is gonna touch a heart. It's gonna touch a life. And so I just want to thank God for that, and for you taking the time to share your voice. It really means a lot to me.
Thank you for having me on. It was an honor.
Thank you, Patrick.